Our daily Bible reading for March the 10th. Our reading today comes from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 14. We'll begin reading in verse 53 through the end of the chapter, verse 72. And they led Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests and the elders and the scribes came together. And Peter had followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest. And he was sitting with the guards and warming himself at the fire. Now the chief priests and the whole council were seeking testimony against Jesus to put him to death, but they found none. For many bore false witness against him, but their testimony did not agree. And some stood up and bore false witness against him, saying, We heard him say, I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another not made with hands. Yet even about this their testimony did not agree. And the high priest stood up in the midst and asked Jesus, Have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you? But he remained silent and made no answer. Again the high priest asked him, Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? And Jesus said, I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. And the high priest tore his garments and said, What further witnesses do we need? You have heard his blasphemy. What is your decision? And they all condemned him as deserving death. And some began to spit on him, and to cover his face, and to strike him, saying to him, Prophesy! And the guards received him with blows. And as Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servants' girls of the high priest came, and seeing Peter warming himself, she looked at him and said, You also were with the Nazarene, Jesus. But he denied it, saying, I neither know nor understand what you mean. And as he went out into the gateway, and the rooster crowed. And the servant girl saw him, and began again to say to the bystanders, This man is one of them. But again he denied it. And after a little while, the bystanders again said to Peter, Certainly you are one of them, for you are a Galilean. But he began to invoke a curse on himself, and to swear, I do not know this man of whom you speak. And immediately the rooster crowed a second time. And Peter remembered how Jesus had said to him, Before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. And he broke down and wept. A few thoughts on today's passage. Perhaps each of us may be certain of how we might react under sets of circumstances. We really never know until we are there as to how they truly may play out. Those who respond to emergency situations practice over and over so that their reactions are almost second nature and that emotions may be taken out of the picture. It is when we are unprepared for such instances that almost anything can happen. Those who are regarded as heroes will often recount that they did not think before committing the act of bravery, but simply rushed in, throwing caution to the wind, as it were. That is usually the case in a crowd, when out of the multitude only 1 or 2 will take action, while the others perhaps are paralyzed with fear. We don't know what ran through Peter's head that night, but we get a glimpse of how impetuous he was. It was here that we see that Peter had acted without thinking of what only hours before Jesus had assured him would happen: the great denial in spite of vehement assurance to the contrary. It was Peter alone who had dared follow closely right into the high priest's courtyard amongst the officers and watched. Yet, when the chance came to proclaim his allegiance to Jesus, Peter will refuse to be associated with him. Unusual, you say? Even with all the evidence for our benefit, we too may find ourselves in that same situation. Maybe it's a conversation at work about religion that we shun when we have the answers. It may be an opportunity to set the record straight on an issue of morality that we avoid so as to not offend. We may all have done the same thing as Peter. Oh, maybe not with so many words. Yet in all honesty, we have, without standing up for him, been in the same position as Peter. When Peter realized what had happened, he immediately took note of the situation and with remorse wept. I wonder if we have done the same thing upon realizing our denial. A question of the day. What was it about Peter that the writers of the gospel accounts seem to capture again and again in his deeds and misdeeds? And finally, a thought to meditate on this day. Think of a situation you may encounter this day that may put your faith on trial and how you will react. And those are our thoughts for today, March 10th.